welcome to the video. Today we will be discussing the solution to part 2 of the Quonset Hut problem. The question asks us to make a plan to design Quonset huts of different sizes that have approximately the same volume. How will you determine the new dimensions? What info do you need to begin? What tools could help you in this task? Since the problem asks us to make a plan to construct huts with the same dimensions as a common hut, there's some information that we need to know before moving forward. Firstly, we need the volume of a common Quonset hut. As stated in the previous part of the solution, the volume is 2,400 pi. And since we're also trying to make a plan involving huts with any dimensions, we also need to know the volume for a hut with unknown dimensions. This is given to us through the formula in the previous question, that is half pi r squared L, where r is the radius and L is the length of the hut. So if we equate these two values to each other, it shows that a Quonset hut of any dimensions is equal to a Quonset hut with the volume of a common hut.
The next step is to simplify this equation and try to isolate one of the variables, meaning that we get the variable by itself on one side of the equation. This ensures that at the end, we can plug in any value into one of the variables and solve for the other one to find the value of the other one. In this case, it is easier to isolate the variable L.
So the first step to doing this is by dividing each side by pi. So basically, since there's a pi on each side, by dividing each side by pi, we can cancel the pi. And we're left with half pi r squared L is equal to 2,400. So now the next step is to get rid of this 1/2. And the way that we can do this is by multiplying each side by 2. The reason for this is because 2 times 1/2 is equal to 1. And since we're trying to get rid of it and make it just 1 so that there's no coefficient, this is the way to do it. So after that, we get r squared L is equal to 4,800, since 2,400 times 2 is 4,800. And the last step to isolating L is to divide each side by r squared in order to get rid of this r squared. So the very last equation that we're left with is L is equal to 4,800 over r squared. And we can use this equation to get dimensions for any Quonset hut. So we have the equation L equals 4,800 over r squared. So say, for example, that we want to plug in the value 5 for r. That means that the radius of the hut is equal to 5 and that the width of the hut is then equal to 10 because the width is 2 times the radius. So we plug in 5 into this equation, and using a tool known as a calculator, we find that the length is equal to 192. So we find that a hut that is 10 feet wide and 192 feet long has the same volume as a common Quonset hut, which is 20 feet wide and 48 feet long. So even though the volume of both of these are the same, because of the great difference between the dimensions, the surface area will also greatly vary. Thank you for watching.